A very good afternoon to one and all. Very happy to have such eminent personalities present here for our two-day national webinar on understanding research. A coming together of the finest intellectual minds is always a pleasure. And when this communion occurs amidst troubling tides, it becomes even more meaningful. When the going gets tough, the tough gets going. So goes the saying. At moments of crisis, even a small step forward is a positive move. And here we are, to just instill that urge to strive, to seek, to find, and never to yield. And also, perhaps to remember in the course of that perpetual striving, to take a short coffee break as well. However, serious pursuers of research would also know that research is an exploratory journey with umpteen labyrinthine curves. It demands an enormous amount of time and energy and is an exhausting field to opt for. Only the truly passionate are called for this discipline. And I'm glad to be involved with such a gathering of like-minded intellectuals. So I had earlier forgotten, I hadn't noticed that our dear beloved Sandhya ma'am, former head of the Department of English, had also joined. Sandhya ma'am, a very, very warm welcome to you, ma'am. Sandhya ma'am, can you hear me, ma'am? Dr. Sandhya Pipai?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sharon. Yeah.
Very warm welcome, ma'am. I'm so glad that you have joined us.
Okay. My pleasure. I'm glad to see that you're doing things. Thank you. Okay. Carry on.
Okay, ma'am. A union of some of the finest intellectual minds to interact, share, and promote the dissemination of knowledge is indeed a pleasure. And when this communion occurs in these troubling times, it's even more meaningful, and we are privileged to have with us here academicians as eminent as my dear research guide, Dr. Meenakshi Pillai, a matter of personal pride, because I am fortunate enough to have worked under her and to have submitted my thesis under her guidance. And of course, Sandhya ma'am, who has always been our greatest inspiration, the beacon of our institution, our own principal and everyday academician herself, Dr. Rita Ladadikoto. And besides, we are happy to be part of a gathering of assistant professors, research scholars, and students from institutions spread out in various parts of the country, including DU, BHU, IITs, the Institute of English, and other meritorious institutions. Above all, the resource persons for our two-day national webinar, Rakesh and Dr. Nivedita, are passionate scholars who have proven their mettle by the range and reach of their academic endeavors. Always as down-to-earth as she grows taller in fame and achievements, Dr. Meenakshi Pillai had always been my lease of fresh air at the Institute of English. And now she's back after her successful stint as visiting professor at University of California. She's here with us today. Director of the Center for Cultural Studies, University of Kerala, Meena ma'am, who availed Fulbright twice in addition to the Shastri and Commonwealth Fellowship, is editor of the first ever volume of essays on the representation of women in Malayalam cinema. Her experience in the fields of Kerala modernity and gender culture, her insightful columns, reviews, and her recent insights on the digital sphere have been true assets to the scholarly world. And on a personal note, I recall with love and awe the informal spaces of discussion we enjoyed in her chamber during our days as FDP scholars at the Institute. With love and warmth, dear ma'am, I welcome you to our midst. Welcome, ma'am. Meena ma'am.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you. I'm overwhelmed.
described as a heroine in her own right. Maybe if you would Google Dr. Sandhya Pai, you would find the first words written, a heroine in her own right. That's how she is described by the Kerala High Court for her headstrong fight against the University of Kerala to gain her rightful marks at the undergraduate level. Dr. Sandhya Pai was also chairman of the Board of Studies in English PAS and a beloved former head of the Department of English. She is a real fountainhead of innovation, and Dr. Sandhya is truly an irreplaceable genius whose retirement has left a huge void which remains glaringly vacant in our department. We are humbled by your presence here, ma'am, and a very hearty welcome to you, ma'am. Sandhya, ma'am, welcome.
Thank you so much, Sharon. I'm also, I don't know what to say. I'm really, truly touched, overwhelmed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Having assumed duty as principal in a situation of crisis, Dr. Rita Lada Bikoto has been steering the college almost single-handedly and efficiently for the past few months. It is her drive and passion that has led the department to initiate such scholarly ventures, and we really owe it to her for the determination she has passed on to us so effortlessly. Thank you, ma'am, for being such a wonderful inspiration and for your encouraging presence here in spite of your ill health. She has been sick since yesterday, but in spite of all that, she has managed to come here and to give us the much required encouragement. Hearty welcome to you, dear ma'am. The coordinator, my dear friend, colleague, Nimisha, has put all her heart and soul into this webinar, this 2-day webinar, so much so that she has been having restless nights, in fact, from the moment this has been conceived. Initially, it was conceived as a webinar for the PG students alone, but it was her afterthought that enabled this to be opened out for the entire scholarly community. And it is her grit and determination that made this webinar possible in the space of just a few days after it was conceived. And I thank you, my our dear Nimisha. Thank you, and a very warm welcome to you.
Thank you, Sharon.
Then, of course, the heart and our department runs so efficiently because of my colleagues at the Department of English who have been working tirelessly and in perfect coordination to ensure that things are in place. If it were not for them, I don't think things would have happened in such beautiful coordinations. So to my lovely team, a very hearty welcome. And dear esteemed faculty members, research scholars, and students from across the length and breadth of the country, your presence is our blessing, and it's our pressing motivation to carry forward such ventures. We are extremely grateful for being here with us, and we extend a very warm welcome to each and every one of you. It's not that I missed out our resource person. I wanted to keep the best for the last. So Rakesh, my dear beloved friend, our resource person for the day, is a dear and revered friend who was nicknamed, I don't know whether I should say this here, but I thought I should mention it. He was nicknamed Dumbledore by the research scholars at the Institute of English for his impeccable wisdom. And I came to know him as a friend. I thought I should mention that because, you know, that's how we see you. I came to know him as a friend come counselor who had an answer for every problem, and who had such research-based analytical skills that reflected even in his ordinary day-to-day conversations. And I remember once when the research scholars went out for a lunch together, he was talking about the cuisine in such an analytical manner that I wondered whether he sees research in everything, in almost everyday life situations as well. And at the podium, Rakesh has always been a very passionate speaker, who, when he dealt with the subject, defended it with all his vigor. And Meena ma'am always used to rightly say that he used to defend his works as though it was his baby, and that no one else had a right to had a claim over it. And in addition to all this, he's been a devoted scholar. He has been the median of international publishers and has widely published several works with the Cambridge University Press, Palgrave Macmillan, Wiley Blackwell, and Wisdom India Almanac. And I'm sure my colleague Manju has even more to add, so I'm leaving the rest to her. Rakesh, I believe, is just the right person to initiate the uninitiated into the whirlpool of research. A very, very warm welcome, my dear friend Rakesh.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you for the very warm welcome. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, one and all. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Sharon. I now cordially invite the captain of our institutional ship, our dear principal, Dr. Rita Lata Dikuto, for the inaugural address.
So our esteemed resource person of the day, Mr. Rakesh, Ramamoorthy, our resource person of tomorrow's session, Dr. Nivedita, our very our dignitary with us, though not a part of the formal program, Dr. Meena T. Pillai, who is it's a pride to say that she is with us today. The head of the Department of English, Dr. Sharon, our seminar coordinator, Nimisha, our MC for the day, Anjali, all the faculty of the Department of English and all other members of the research community, the humanities research community and the larger research community. I hear that a lot of faculty from other institutions also are with us. And my very dear students who are the reason why we have such programs. So I gather that my role is to make an inaugural address. So first of all, let me congratulate the vibrant team of our postgraduate Department of English for this excellent and proactive venture which they have initiated. The Cutting Edge National Webinar Series, Season 1. When we hear Season 1 itself, it brings about, some expectancy, like better things are to follow in the coming seasons even. And so the theme is understanding research. And the topic for today is Through the Looking Glass, the basics of humanities research. And I'm sure I esteemed resource person who I've heard so much about from Dr. Sharon. He has, no, I hadn't heard about his nickname. I think practically everything else I'd heard from her. Okay. And two research scholars. So anyway, I know he is going to, tell us about the nitty-gritty of humanities research. So I will not go into that. But there is one thing which, as a person who is in the field, I'm a commerce teacher. My research was basically in the humanities area, the career development of women managers and corporate research. And so which was a interdisciplinary area too. So from that perspective, the 2 points I would like to concentrate today is what we as humanities and social science researchers can do or should do. Whether we should do is again debatable and that can be left to you. But what we can do to address two challenges, which I feel are very, very critical. One, and again, I say this is left open to debate, but this is my perspective, that one great challenge which humanities and social science researchers have to contend with today is the continued marginalization of the research in humanities as compared to the research in the natural science disciplines. In general, the humanities research is considered as a research into issues that have no real bearing on real life and don't significantly contribute to the nation's capability to solve the real world problems. And there seems to be a belief which is possibly reinforced by the funding opportunities available that innovation, we know that innovation is the word today, and they say innovate or perish, right? So there is a feeling that innovation can only be driven by knowledge generated by science and technology research. However, it is my opinion that humanities and social science research has a very important role to play in the whole innovation system. For, as we know, while science and technology might generate innovation, it is the humanities and social science researchers that ask the fundamental questions about whether an innovation is acceptable and what are the social and ethical dimensions of new innovation or new technology. And it is they which provide the public and the society input regarding, how to make an informed judgment relating to these innovations. I'm sure I'm talking to very esteemed academics who are well aware of this, but I thought this is the only, these are some areas which really seem to be, to me, to be a challenge. So what I would like to say is the public are not interested in technical facts alone, but the wider implications of such technology. So research in the humanities, they provide a critical avenue for assessing very critically how does innovation or the introduction of new technology really impacts society as a whole. So we can say that there appears to be a real scope for humanities research to inform the policy making by contributing to a better understanding of the different human and social role of any phenomenon. However, again, I may be repeating myself, but I again would like to say the full value of research in the social sciences is yet to be recognized and affirmed by the policy makers. And this may be so because they're not really available. They're really not aware of the available research in the different fields. And humanities researchers, generally, they don't, maybe some of them have, but all of them do not have the effective networks to make their research known where it should be known. Neither do they always have access to linkages for dialogue and exchange. So I feel that this humanities and social science research has got tremendous potential to help us really understand why certain social problems exist, why poverty, why discrimination based on gender and caste exist, and why, in spite of all the lip service we pay to democracy, secularism, and such ideals, these still remain very elusive concepts. So I would like to say that even if this is not the agenda of today's discussion, being a platform with so many researchers in humanities are meeting, there is a need, I feel, to focus on how the humanities researchers have to address this issue of this apparent discrepancy between the potential impact of their research and the comparatively low attention which they receive from the policymakers and from the research communities and from society at large. And I believe that this discrepancy really arises because of the failure of, again, that is, I will not generalize, failure sometimes of a research community to really be aware of the linkage, the very strong linkage between knowledge base and the knowledge outcomes. To give an example which has been pointed out by many already, research in human cloning. This need not be the preserve of natural scientists alone, because there are so many ethical dimensions to this research which needs to be addressed by social science researchers, right? So we need to understand that the ethics which underpins all research, even scientific research, cannot be limited to just any one branch of research. Another challenge which I will just dwell on very briefly is the need for building research capacity, which includes, say, the individual skill, the quality of institutional support received in the form of funding, infrastructure, encouragement, the time available for research, because we know, all of us as academics know, that we spend a lot of our time on administrative work and not just on academic work. And this leaves us very precious, little time for really concentrating on a research activity. And there is And these skills, individual research skills, as any other skill, can only be gained by doing research. So there is a need for staff to engage in research, in particular for junior scholars and senior research scholars to engage in research together in teams, because we know that if our research has to have any future, there has to be a continuation. And when the senior eminent research scholars leave, as they must do at some time or the other, there have to be research scholars to step into their place. And this can only happen if they receive the right mentoring and the right guidance, which will facilitate learning and the effective honing of skills by them. So here I would like to point out that one challenge which all of us humanities researchers seem to face is a lone wolf mentality. I think a good many of us do. And this is something which prevents us from engaging in collaborative research work with people from other disciplines, even research work with the junior, between the senior scholars and the junior, because we prefer to sit comfortably in a little ivory tower maybe. And there's much to be said for that, because at the end of the day, research is a lonely job which needs, and the interest of the scholar should definitely get the priority there. But however, as I'm talking about, there's one theme of visibility and the perceived value of our research. I feel that there is this need for identifying opportunities which would make our research more visible and ensure that we can keep in mind international trends, emerging social trends, and see how these can be aligned with the basic research strength of the researcher and the other members of the team who he or she may be collaborating with. So that is just one thing I would like the second issue I would like to point out is this issue of building research capacity in such a way that there is a continuity. And I think that all institutions need to give special attention to developing an institutional research strategy whereby they can aim to increase the participation of the staff at different levels in research. This is a problem we are addressing in our institution now by the research committee, and everyone is putting their heads together to discuss this. How we can enhance student research training, how we can increase the internal and external research funding, how we can increase international collaboration in research, and how we can increase not only the volume but also the quality of our research output. And the point I was addressing earlier, how we can enhance the impact of our research, and very important, how we can integrate our research with our teaching activity too. So I think those two are the real questions I would like to put before you today. And I know it's not, I should not be taking the valuable time of the eminent people, the resource persons we have with us. But all I would just like to end with this note that I believe that if the humanities research community, the wider community, I think all of you have your research networks too, if they could give adequate attention to this linkage, the natural inseparability of disciplines, I very strongly believe that all, and I found this out in my research too, that we cannot just say that any discipline is a watertight compartment today. They are inseparable, and there is a very, very strong connection, just like every single part of the universe is connected, as quantum physics and all is showing us by the day. So this connection has to be understood by our researchers, and they have to try to increase, I will not say have to, they should possibly think about whether they can do something to increase the visibility and value of their research without at all compromising on their academic ideals and standards. If this is done, we would be able to ensure a future anchored on what we call the knowledge economy, and bring about the the situation that this future is for all disciplines, which includes very much the humanities and social science research. And on that note, may I apologize for taking a little bit more time than I intended to. And I welcome all of you, each one of you, to a very, very enriching session. And it's my hope that we'll have a very fruitful day and everybody would make use of the interactive opportunities available. So over to you, Rakesh, sir. Thank you so much, Department of English, for giving me the privilege to inaugurate this session. Have a great day, all of you. And Sandhya, let me say just a line to my very dear friend, Sandhya. I'm so happy that she is here with us today. I welcome her most warmly to this meeting. And another, though I mentioned Meena Pillai, Dr. Meena Pillai at the beginning, once more, ma'am, we are so very privileged to have you here with us. I don't know whether you realize that we are Facebook friends too. I think she will not know the number of Facebook friends we have. So, and I have listened to some of the messages which she's been sending from US and all that. We're so happy to have you here with us, ma'am. And over to you, Dr. Rakesh. Welcome. Have a good day, everyone.
Dear Lata ma'am, you have indeed rightly placed this program in the right perspective. Thank you very much for your valuable words and good wishes. I now invite my dear colleague, Ms. Manju Thomas, to introduce the resource person for today. Over to Manju.
I can see a smile on the resource persons. I will not encroach your time, sir, but on a very warm note to all the valuable, worthy participants of today's session. With the onset of our new NEP, National Education Policy, research has become the need in the realm of education. And we have aptly chosen this topic of understanding research. It wouldn't be justice if I don't mention at least a few aspects of the expertise of our resource person, though he is very well known to most of the participants here. Presently, Mr. Rakesh Ramamoorthy is working as an assistant professor of English at St. John's College, Anjal. Soon he will be addressed as Dr. Rakesh Ramamoorthy. Personally, it sounds more suitable to your name, sir. His thesis is already submitted, which is on select popular cricket narratives from India and Pakistan. Now, an interesting factor to all the student lots in this group, he has procured an MPhil degree and an MA degree from the University of Hyderabad, an MPhil degree with a CGPA of 9.11 students, and an MA degree with a CGPA of 9.37, securing the first rank. And he has also won the Sarojini Naidu Memorial Trust Medal also for that. Now, he serves on the editorial board of the Routledge Journal, International Journal of History of Sport. His academic publications include textbooks for Cambridge University Press India and articles in such prestigious outlets as the Explicator, a Routledge journal, the Wiley-Blackwell Encyclopedia of Postcolonial Studies, and the Palgrave Encyclopedia of Imperialism and Anti-Imperialism. Actually, I sat down with a piece of paper to write down the achievements of our resource person, but then I found that one paper is not sufficient. Since time is limited, sir, I will leave the platform entirely to you. A hearty welcome to today's session. Thank you.
Hello, hi. Thank you for that, very generous introduction. Thank you in the first place for the invitation. See, I don't know how to deal with the social part of this particular gathering, because it's so complicated in a very pleasant manner. Because it's very rare that a conference brings together your academic and personal contacts and acquaintances in to such an extent. Right, because in this conference, there are lots of my friends involved, right? From Sharon Jechi, there are lots of my friends involved. my own teachers are here. Most importantly, Meena ma'am, she's here, right? Then the other resource person, Nilida Chechi, is a fellow HCU survivor. That happened quite serendipitously. I had no idea she was the other speaker until it was all fixed up, right? And then quite a lot of my students are here, which is which is a great pleasure to see here, because quite a lot of fellow researchers from the institute. So that's very pleasant. It's great to be here. So let me get right into it and see. The thing is, as has been mentioned already, I think, okay, before we get into this, I will start by presenting the PPT. Since the technology, the platform we are using is at a Google Meet, you won't be able to see me when I am presenting this slide. So that's a bit of a problem, but that's fine. Under these circumstances, these COVID circumstances, we have to do the best that we can. All right. So I won't be able to see any of your response if anything is typed in there. So if I'm not audible, if something is not clear, please feel free to interrupt. All right. Please just feel free to speak. Let me present the presentation. Well, before I do that, before I go into that, let me first say, as Sharon Chechi mentioned, this whole event was first conceived of as one in a series of lectures for the PG students, and it's afterwards that it grew into such a big program. And that is a sign of the times, not a sign of the kind of resource person. I mean, at least it's not about me, or it's not about that, because research is that important. And there is, I believe, I have that feeling, and I believe, and then the kind of response that we have received makes me believe that other people share my feeling that, even though a lot of people are doing research, a lot of people are gathering research degrees, a lot of people are publishing research papers, but maybe somewhere in there, the approach to research could be better, right? The way we are conceptualizing research, the way we are approaching it, leaves something to be desired, right? So I have conceptualized this lecture as a kind of a discussion of the very basic ideas of researching in humanities. This is not aimed at there are so many eminent academics among the listeners. This is not aimed at them. This is aimed at the PG students, right? Because that's how the event was originally conceived. And later on, I felt perhaps it's fine not to change it as well, because it's very important that we go back to the basics. Right, it's very important that certain very basic ideas continue to inform our research, even at the highest level. So that's the kind of lecture that I have planned here today. Let me present this slide now. So as the title says, this is about the basics of humanities research. And what's the looking glass part of it? I'll come to it towards the end of the lecture. Right. So as I was saying, I was already giving you the statutory warning that this is about certain approaches to humanities research than about any particular research methodology. See, and I don't even know whether the certain methodologies, certain concepts can be taught, but I am skeptical as to whether research can be taught in a particular sense. Research is to the best of my understanding, the research in humanities needs a particular approach to culture, a particular way of thinking about culture, which is something that will remain uniform, whether it's someone doing a UG dissertation, an undergraduate dissertation, or writing a PhD thesis. That does not change. It is such an idea that I hope to, it's certain such ideas that I hope to speak to you about right now. What I had in mind while thinking about today's lecture is one very practical issue. I was thinking about why good students at the PG level often fail to become accomplished researchers. So that, I believe, has to do with certain approaches to research, Because students tend to approach research in a rather mechanical manner, in a rather programmatic manner, understanding it as a set of processes to be followed, right? See, if for us teachers, even though we are not doctorate holders ourselves, we are often asked for tips on research by our students, and the kind of questions that we encounter are very telling, because that shows, see, that's not the fault of the students. It says something about the way we fail to educate our students. What are the trends? And and there are these questions like, see, how many pages, right? In a sense, trivial questions which will answer themselves if we have certain productive ways of reading culture, right? In other words, what I am asking, the question that I'm raising today is, how do we conceptualize the subjectivity, the identity of a humanities researcher? If we are doing research in the humanities, what sort of an approach do we need? That's the question that I'm hoping to discuss today. And this is going to be the structure of the lecture. In the first part, I will speak about what is humanities, how we understand the discipline that we are all affiliated to. In the second part, I will speak about what it is that we do in humanities research and what we don't do. Obviously, that will be an incomplete list, but certain important points. Then I will speak about two things that I have called the theory conundrum and the originality conundrum, two issues that researchers, by which I mean PG students who are making that transition to doctoral research, grapple with. Right. Finally, I will come back to the metaphor of the mirror and the looking glass that the title has raised, and ask who is a good researcher. Right. That's the structure of the lecture. Now, what is humanities? So we all know what humanities is in a sense, right? Humanities is a discipline under which a few subjects are categorized. Mostly studies of language and literatures, right? Languages and literatures. The best way, throughout this lecture, I will only offer working definitions. The textbook definitions and citations are things that students can acquire on their own. Here I am only speaking about certain ways of understanding things. So there will only be working definitions. So humanities is about the study of human cultures. I don't think anybody will disagree with that, right? It is about queries into what it means to be human. How have human beings shaped their own existence? That's the question that we ask. So the fundamental question there is that of what is culture. See, I'll be spending quite a bit of time on that, because I believe that even though that's a very basic idea, an understanding of the nature of culture itself, that's a paradox, nature of culture. The understanding of culture and its significance will completely change the way we approach research. It can give us a certain kind of academic rigor, even at the most highest level, right? And as Raymond Williams has famously pointed out in his keywords, culture is one of the most difficult words to define. There is no doubt about that. But then I want to speak about one very pervasive and problematic way of conceptualizing culture, which has got to do with the whole divide between high culture on the one side and popular culture and mass culture on the other side. This is something that everybody knows, right? The idea that culture is culture. The word culture signifies high culture, some kind of elite culture. That culture. The best examples of culture are forms of high art like opera, Kathakali, Mohiniyattam, right? And Shakespeare's plays or Milton's poems, and not folk theatre, street plays, comedy shows, etc., etc. Right. And closely associated with this notion of culture as representing some kind of high art is the idea that a cultured person is a person with an impeccable way of behavior, a morally superior way of behavior. So this whole idea that culture is the preserve of the elite, that certain kinds of culture are superior to others, that kind of classification is something which has been discussed with depth at the postgraduate level. Then why am I coming back to it in a lecture on research? I'm not just filling the time here. It's not a gap filler. The sense that I get is that the view of this particular view of high culture still shapes the way in which many postgraduate students and even many people who are at a higher level view literature. Even today, we hear, you see, when we ask people as to, when somebody asks a humanities researcher or a scholar or a teacher as to why they are so interested in literature, the answer that we get is something similar, right? Something similar to this, something aligned with this whole notion of high culture. That there is great literature, it's worth, and there is something intrinsically worthwhile, that is literature for literature's sake. And obviously that is problematic. And what I am proposing, and that's not my idea, it's something that's fairly well established now, is that we need a more elemental and inclusive understanding of culture. I am saying the best way to understand culture is to understand it as the counterpoint, as the antonym of nature. That is, whatever is not natural is cultural. See, again, this is basic stuff. Think about this. The black fur of a cat and its green eyes, that is natural. That is something that is guided by natural laws. That is not open to negotiation. But the idea that such a black cat is a bad omen, that portends some kind of bad luck, is cultural. Right? And race is natural. Our ethnicity is natural. But our perspectives of ethnicity are cultural. Racial stereotypes are cultural. See, Caucasian skin has something to do with biology, the way the nature works. But the idea that white skin is purer and that imbues such people with certain high qualities is a racial stereotype, right? So, and this much again, I don't think this will come as news to anybody. But what I want to remind you people of is the fact that culture is the realm of meaning making. Any object, see this, in that is the most inclusive understanding of culture possible. Many things around us are natural in the sense that they obey the physical law, right? But then our perspective of it, our perspectives of them make them cultural. The process of bringing our hands together in a particular form and the heat that we feel then due to friction is natural. That's governed by laws of science. But the idea that constitutes a respectful form of address called namaste or namaskaram is cultural. So culture is the realm of meaning making. That is a very simple point, but I would believe our research projects would be much better if we keep this in mind. Rather than thinking of research as study of a particular author or a set of texts or some phenomenon, some cultural studies project, just for the sake of it, if you remember that in 9 humanities is in 99% of the time when we are doing humanities research, we are dealing with meaning. We are dealing with the ways in which meanings are established and questioned. That's the next point. Culture is the realm of meaning making. Furthermore, it's a site of contestation over meaning. Right? We constantly question. See, meanings are made through narratives, through cultural practices, and they are also constantly questioned over them. The best example for this process of meaning making as well as the process of contestation is that of gender, the making of gender. We all know the very significant as well as well-known point about sex being biological and gender being cultural, right? So gender roles, the idea that men should behave in a particular manner and women should behave in another manner, that is cultural. The idea that see, and since I'm speaking, since the home college is a girls' college, the idea that it is the women, young as well as old, who should cook and clean, and it's the men who should drive. That is cultural. That is not natural. There is nothing natural about it. See, the point here is that such a vision of culture as the realm of meaning making is radical because it enables us to question all constructions of meaning. We can't question gravity. See, we can't do what Phoebe Buffett does in an episode of Friends. We can't say that, I don't feel as if I am being pulled down, but that I'm being pushed up. But almost every other aspect of our existence, other than certain basic things which are governed by natural law, belong to the realm of culture. Right? The case of sexual minorities is a good example. The sexuality that you possess, the third gender or being intersex, is natural. But then the kind of ways in which symbolic attributes that are ascribed to it, that is cultural. So culture is the site of meaning making. It's also the site of contestation over meaning. Right, that's the point that I will come back to see to take an example that is very relevant in contemporary India. Think about the idea of an ideal citizen in today's public culture. Again, it's a public culture. The certain very influential majoritarian perspectives of nationality and nationalism. We are expected to celebrate our nation and be proud of our nation. If we do anything else, we are anti-national. But many of us will question that. We will say, no, you don't get to decide what constitutes an ideal citizen. If we say that the attribute of an ideal citizen is an adherence to a democratic spirit and a willingness to question the people in power, that is contestation of our meaning, right? So look at this. This is not anything anything sacrosanct. Just a diagram that I made, just so that this thing is clear. See, any cultural phenomenon is constructed by numerous sources. There are numerous sites, numerous sites of culture. Our idea of gender is constructed, yes, through literature, through films, through performing arts, yes, through religion, through religious codes, which says women can do this and they cannot do that. That they can worship in this way and they cannot worship in this way. See, certain gender roles are written into all religious rituals, and again, that is cultural, not natural. It is open to negotiation and contestation. Everyday comments, including rape jokes. Why are rape jokes problematic? I mean, that question is asked these days, unfortunately. But they are problematic because they provide a very skewed vision of gender. Right. And see, what I'm trying to get across with this particular graphic is the idea that meaning is constructed through diverse sources. Look at this bubble on the bottom, government and bureaucracy. Think about the ways in which forms of administration reinforces, or in some cases questions, gender stereotypes. See, think about the fact that in the Indian bureaucracy, the kind of forms that we get, it is very rare. I don't know whether there are instances of we finding an option to list somebody's wife as a sort of a guardian. Maybe you can do that in hospitals, but other than that, we don't find it anywhere else. It's always the name of either the father or the mother or the husband. That's what's usually asked. Or think about the recent judgment on the Hindu Succession Act, which said that women have equal rights over their parents' property. Well, that is progressive at one level, where they say that a daughter is always a daughter, but that was accompanied by a very sexist comment that a son is a son until only he marries. Right? Think about that. I mean, see, that says that marital relationship somehow. See, that again brings us to the whole thing about women as being somebody who will lure the son away from the parents, right? So on and so forth. That's also a very patriarchal notion. And this bubble obviously is not complete, which is why I put this etc. here. So an obvious but significant point that I'm trying to get across here is that culture and the contestational meaning that is central to the working of any culture is about power. Culture is a site of power struggle over meaning. Culture is a realm where hierarchies are established or questioned through reinforcing or questioning of meaning. That, I believe, is a point that is worth making, even though it is simple. I would not mind in the very least if my whole lecture turned out to be redundant and if everybody was well aware or were completely convinced. If all the students, I'm speaking about the students here, I'm not addressing the higher academics here at all. I'm just thinking of them as colleagues here who are here to listen in a friendly manner. But then, even if all the students are well aware of it, I wouldn't mind. No harm done. But then, what I am saying is that if students do not know that culture, that studying culture is about the contestation over meaning, and if they don't understand that the fight over meaning is a deeply political one, that it has very practical ramifications in our daily lives, both at the micro and macro level, which is where Rita ma'am's point about the influence, about the impact of humanities and social science research is very prescient. If we don't understand that, then much of our research will not have a direction. Right? See, and another closely related significant point is the question of what role does literature play in this? If we look at this diagram, it's not anything sacrosanct, but what I'm trying to get across there is that literature is one significant site of meaning making among others. Right? So which is why, see, no group of students are so are in such a position that they have to constantly justify their selection of their area of study as students of humanities. Right? Why literature? Why linguistics? Why cultural studies? Why are you doing research in humanities? We'll have to answer these questions ad nauseam. And it does not matter whether we convince others or not. because some people cannot be convinced. But then it is very important that students of literature and students of culture perceive that literature is just one among the many sites of forging of culture or forging of meaning. So if you want to understand the way gender works in contemporary Kerala, you can understand that by reading contemporary Malayalam fiction and Malayalam poetry, yes, of course. You can understand that by analyzing our popular culture, such as our films, our TV shows, our web series, whatever. You also have to understand. You also have to analyze the way we still conceptualize marriage, the way in which the institution of marriage still functions in Kerala. We have to explore the comments that appear on the internet. See, and this is not an anecdote. It is something that is profoundly significant humanities research. See, to understand culture, you have to understand everyday narratives. What your father or grandfather says over dinner at your home is significant. That is a response to certain larger narratives that does shape certain streams of thought as well. It has a constructive role as well. Because until people start thinking for themselves and form their own conclusions to a great extent, everybody's personality is what they acquire over the dinner table. Right? And it is very important, see, to understand the gender politics of Kerala, just read the comments that appear on Facebook beneath almost any post that has to do with a female celebrity. Could be that they got married, could be that they got remarried, it could be that they got divorced, it could be that they did none of these things. All these are news for certain forms of news portals. They will highlight that somebody got married for the 10th time or the 3rd time. So my point is, somebody got married for the 3rd time. What does it matter? Let them get married for the 10th time. What do we care? Why should we care? But then the comments that we see beneath, the kind of vitriol, kind of toxic comments that we see beneath, tells us about our culture. And these are not comments in wilderness. We often don't open those threads because we don't want that kind of toxicity. But sometimes try clicking them open and try to follow the dialogue, so to speak, because you will find some people interacting with each other there. People forming themselves into different groups, but with one group making very sexist comments or very casteist comments, and with some others objecting to that, and that often becomes heated online debates. And you should know that there is research going on such things. Maybe there is research going on in the Kerala context as well, but it's not my place to speak about that. But then there is published research on social media comments and the ways in which certain kinds of public spheres are formed through social media. In the Western context, such research exists. That is another side of meaning making. Right? So, humanities is the study of the ways in which human beings have ascribed meanings and the way in which they continue to ascribe meanings and the power relations that emerge from it. Right? And this idea is worth keeping in mind when we formulate any research question in the humanities. Right? And that is, see, and you can take any nuanced research and you will be able to identify the ways in which that relates to meaning making and the struggle over meaning. Orientalism is about the politics of the ways in which certain very rigid meanings were ascribed to the East and the West. Right. So now I move on to the second part of my presentation. I hope everything is clear so far and they were of some use. So I move on to the second part. See, and obviously this is not complete. I can't possibly list every kind of work that is possible within the humanities. But then we can say that our understanding of culture normally helps us to do two kinds of research. And the first is a culture studies approach to conventional literature. What do I mean by that? See, if you look up the web pages of many premier universities, they now say that they will say that the department encourages a cultural studies approach to literature. What do they mean by that? What they mean is that it is fine to study literature. See, focusing to study on literary works, on novel, on poetry. To say that you are not particularly interested in doing popular culture is no crime. That's up to you. But then it is your responsibility to always be aware of and keep in mind the fact that literature is one among the many sides of culture and is not in any way more important. It does not occupy an a priori status, teacher, over other sides of culture. See, when Langston Hughes wrote the poem, I Too Sing America, and he said, see, I hope many of you are familiar with the poem. Basically, he says, I am the darker brother, I am the black man in America. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes. But I laugh and eat well and grow strong. Tomorrow, I'll be at the table when company comes. Nobody will dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they will see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I too am America. What is that? It's a contestation over meaning. Right? He's saying, I am beautiful too. He's saying, I won't let you define what constitutes America. I too am America. I won't let you define what constitutes beautiful. You will understand one day that I am very beautiful. And you will understand that I am the darker brother. I am not the dark brother. I am just darker than you. We are all dark or fair to some extent. It is literally a struggle over meaning. I just chose an example that was very handy. However complicated a work of literature is this struggle over meaning. See, I believe it's very productive to conceptualize meaning as a complex web of interconnections, of mutual contradictions and mutual reinforcements. Right? And it is very important to understand that whenever we do research, this is what we are doing. We are looking at meaning, we are looking at the contestation of a meaning, and we are trying to understand how certain kinds of power equations emerge from these reinforcements and contestations. And in addition to studying conventional literature, this also enables us to do culture studies project, read all forms of culture. Right. See, that is again obvious, but then I would like to offer you a very interesting and a very topical example. 2-3 years back, when the whole debate over WCC happened in Kerala, the social media vitriol, as usual, was at its peak. It's at that time that a particular slur about feminists was invented, which is that of femininity. And that's a cultural act, by the way, a deplorable one, but that is a form of creative intervention in culture. When, see, we know what the suffix "ichi" stands for, right? It is associated with certain forms of insults. When that is combined with the idea of feminism, what that insight says is that the whole idea of a woman who is liberated and has her own opinion is a delegitimized subjectivity. And in one of the most remarkable forms of cultural activism seen in contemporary Kerala, this word and its meaning was reclaimed by feminist scholars, and it's very apt and perhaps a bit, in a sense apt and in a sense, daring that I'm speaking about this in Meena Ma'am's presence, because she had a significant role in that reclaiming, right, her writings. So what happened was a very progressive contestation over meaning, where many people started referring to themselves as a femininity to establish the fact that I am proud of being a feminist. If you see the whole phenomenon of being an independent woman who asserts her equality, I see that as a mark of acceptance. So that is struggle over meaning. Such research is obviously very meaningful, and it has very serious impact, right? So that is what humanities research does most of the time. We ask, what do texts do? What do cultural practices do? Right? What kind of meanings, what kind of hierarchies emerge out of particular texts, particular group of texts, or particular rituals? Right? So, and much of it focuses on politics of exclusion or of resistance. And this is something that is worth saying. When students think of formulating, they're conceptualizing their research, planning their research, they have this notion, they have this not completely wrong notion that they need to recover something, and they start off by looking for answers. But that's not how it works. Research begins with an original question rather than an original answer. Answer is what you work towards. When you are aware of the way meanings are being constantly renegotiated around you, when you are aware of the cultural politics of such negotiations, with the sufficient amount of reading and thinking, you will be able to come up with an original question. That is a question which hasn't been raised before, or which hasn't been effectively answered before. And that is the beginning of your research. See, to give you an example, let's say you have noticed that now social media is very significant to the functioning of celebrity culture. So if you write a research proposal and say you want to work on one celebrity or a group of celebrities, and you say that you are going to argue that this particular celebrity makes use of social media, his or her Facebook account, in order to perpetuate his or her fame, that's not an argument. That is just a preliminary thought. For that to become a research question, an original research question, you need to read further and think further. You need to read work on the ways in which, there is a lot of work, by the way, on the ways in which social media has transformed celebrity culture. Several celebrities make it a point to get somebody, often they don't do it themselves, get somebody to respond to some of the more important comments posted by the fans, thereby creating an idea of intimacy. That's a parasocial relationship. Right. Lady Gaga is very famous for that, because there is research on that, how she has fostered a community which self-identifies as monster babies, fans of Lady Gaga. And the image that is maintained by Lady Gaga is that of someone who cares for these people. See, and they call themselves monsters because the whole identity of Lady Gaga, the pop singer, is that of someone who is outside the normal. So Lady Gaga fandom becomes, community of Lady Gaga fans becomes a community for those people who are different from others. It becomes a community of the quote unquote single quote abnormal and the disenfranchised. And you might have specific questions regarding that. If you have a question as to the ways in which, see, if you just say Shah Rukh Khan uses his social media account to further his fame, that does not do much as far as beginning your research is concerned. But if you are able to identify a particular interesting and original aspect, if you are able to raise a question regarding his highlighting of a particular aspect of his image, that might be a research question. That might be a starting point for your inquiry, right? Or if you want to do research on postcolonial literature, and you are interested in some major Poco writers such as James Cudze and Derek Walcott, and you have noticed that these people often tend to write about Robinson Crusoe, that's just a preliminary thought. But when you factor in the fact that the Crusoe myth has deep resonances for colonialism as well as capitalism, and if you ask a more nuanced question as to the ways in which this Crusoe myth is reconfigured in the writings of postcolonial writers, and the ways in which it re-articulates, that is, to modify the meaning of postcoloniality, that might be a good preliminary research question. If that question hasn't been asked before, that's a question worth asking. That's the research gap. And something that often happens is that students start off with something, researchers start off with something, and they are very, they become very attached to the initial line of thinking, that they fail to go where their thinking takes them. Your reading and your thinking will often modify your central research question and your line of argument in certain ways. And you have to follow that. It is in this context that I would like to highlight the significance of the word interest. See, obviously I will never say that first world researchers from the global north are unilaterally better than those from than their counterparts from the global south. But one good thing that I've noticed about the researchers from the global north is often the way in which they use the word interest as it pertains to their research interest. Because when a researcher says, when a humanities researcher says that I am interested in this particular thing, it should not just mean you are interested in something related to it. Many people say I am interested in this writer and I want to do research on him or her. If you just enjoy reading that writer, that does not make that person worthy of being researched upon. That does not constitute a research topic. If you're interested in a particular aspect of that author's aura or genre's aura or a particular or a cultural phenomenon's working, if you are interested in a particular way in which this cultural practice or text or group of texts intervenes in the larger debates over culture, that is the interest in research, right? So it's that kind of interest that you need. See, let me see. This is not because of any intrinsic value of my research, but I just want to give you use an example that is handy. Whenever I tell even at this point, whenever I tell people that my research is on cricket, people immediately assume that I am an ardent cricket fan. I have a certain amount of interest in the sport, I don't deny that. But I would say that has got nothing to do with my research interest in cricket. See, if I just love cricket, I would just watch it day in and day out. I would not spend a few years of my life researching into the meanings of their cultural practice. So I'm saying we need to be a bit more nuanced about the way we understand our own research interests. Right? That's the point. That's something that we should really keep in mind. All right. Now, what we should not do. Again, this is not a complete list, but then see, so far I've been reminding you of the fact that texts do construct meaning, they do constitute meaning, they do intervene in debates on culture. But our understanding of the relationship between texts or cultural practices and the external world should be nuanced. That relationship is very complicated. We can't assume a linearity of influence. By which what I mean is that we can't assume that 19th century texts reflect 19th century culture in a simple manner. No, they do play a role in shaping it. Vice versa, we can't just assume that it's a one-way relationship wherein texts construct culture. It's a cyclical process. Texts emerge from the world and they go back into the world. Right, which is why, by the way, the whole metaphor of a text, if you understand it properly, is something that can really help you have a nuanced understanding of humanities and culture. Text is a metaphor relating to clothes, the way threads are cross-hatched across each other, right? The way seams, the way the stitching happens, the way in which the complex interwebbing of threads happen. That is what we mean by strands of culture. That they correlate to each other in very complicated manners, in ways we can't imagine. Right. So a related point is that we should not assert causality. Right. We can see in certain forms of science, at least, we can unproblematically predict causality or attribute causality. That the apple fell because of gravity, not because of anything else, probably. But then we have to understand, to go back to this particular, see, take any cultural phenomenon, take this and imagine innumerable number of bubbles around this central bubble, and all of them having arrows pointing towards this, and arrows moving in a different direction as well. That's how culture works. Right. So even if your sample size, your list of text that you're looking at is significantly large, we can never say that, okay, these corpus of writings cause this in a simplistic manner. We have to understand that the best we can say is that they have played a role in that particular process. I hope that came through. So to illustrate these 2 points, again, I would like to speak about a particular snippet of research, which has really impressed and influenced me a lot. Anthony Bateman wrote his doctoral dissertation on English cricket writings. I think he submitted it in 2010 or something. He got his PhD in 2010 or something. By 2011, it was a major book published by Ashgate called Cricket Literature and Culture. And if you read the acknowledgements part of his book, you will learn that he worked on it for close to 10 years. He was not so the whole research he might have been in a PhD program for only 4 years, but he worked on it for 10 years. That shows what it means to do proper genuine research. It may not need 10 years, but it does need quite a bit of commitment. And among various things, Anthony Bateman speaks about early 19th century English cricket writings. He speaks about the relationship between cricket and a particular form of Englishness. He says that during that period, the cricket writings of the period, numerous cricket writings of the period, foreground the rural landscapes on which, rural English landscapes on which cricket was and is played. They associate cricket with the idyllic, supposedly idyllic, rural English landscape. Basically, they evoke the pastoral mode of writing. And Bateman says this is part of a broader reaction against industrialization, or a broader response to the cultural anxieties caused by industrialization. Just like we know that romanticism and its focus on the pastoral, focus on nature, pristine nature, is a result of such an anxiety and a result of such a nostalgia. Cricket writings played a role, contributed to a similar cultural phenomenon. That is the sort of arguments that you can make in humanities, not a very unilateral, clear-cut argument. You can't say that this book or this set of books caused this. Causality is a complicated issue in humanities, but that is not slur on the humanities. That's an indication of the kind of questions that we are dealing with. And obviously these questions are worth probing. Now I come to something which I've touched upon. Don't chase any trends. Never ask a question, what sort of topic is in vogue now? Somebody even told me X, I'm not going to name the field of research. I was speaking about some field of research and that person said, no, that's quite out of fashion these days. I don't hear much about it. See, research methodologies or fields of research can become discredited in certain cases when we understand that the approaches underlying the assumptions of that particular field of study were problematic, were pejorative, etc., etc. But other than that, methodologies don't really completely go out of fashion. What you have to chase is a significant research question. See, my point is that if you see one way to one part of becoming a good researcher is to see what other people are doing in terms of research in places where research is taken seriously. If you look up the top universities of the world, you will find that all sorts of research are accommodated. To this day, you can write a good doctoral thesis on Shakespeare, on a single Shakespearean play. It will be difficult, but not impossible. If you have a new question, if you are enterprising enough, and if you are if your thing is nuanced enough to find a new question, then of course that's where, see, it's places like these, in contexts like that the significance of something like archival research and all comes up. I won't go into that right now. So there is no such thing as a good topic. There are only good questions, interesting questions, questions that are original, questions that are pertinent, and questions that are perhaps not so original. You don't need to write a new thesis to establish that this particular writer employs postmodern narrative strategies, X, Y, or Z. We don't need somebody to tell us, to write a fresh thesis and tell us that Orhan Pamuk uses postmodern narrative strategies. But do you have something new to say about the ways in which those narrative strategies work in his novels? Perhaps you might have such a question that you could raise. Right. And why do people turn towards cultural studies projects? See, the reason why I bring this up is because there is a tendency to commit atrocities in the name of cultural studies. See, people, and I'm not just talking about doctoral theses, even research papers. See, cultural studies projects just happen to not work on literature. They work on culture. They deal with cultural practices. They perhaps deal with popular narratives. They adopt the interview method, and perhaps they deal with certain rituals. right? Certain, the structure of public space may even be the subject of research. But that does not mean that that does not mean cultural research is any less rigorous. That does not mean, right? Cultural research. So what many people tend to do is to take up some phenomenon and describe it with a certain amount of information and say, this is how I am doing it because it's a cultural project. Please don't, place such burdens on cultures. Cultures deserves better, right? See, regarding the other thing, see, because I see one of the things that I want to tell you is that, see, I know of students who are researching early modern drama, and one of them whom I know is doing that, chose to do that because he or she could find a genuinely new question to deal with that. Right? I'm not going to speak about the person themselves here, but then still, so it is about the question. It is not about the kind of topic you work on. And the next point should be fairly obvious, but then when it comes to research, please don't speak about pure literature or great literature. We are not denying that there are great works of literature. Of course there are. But then it is not the function of research to read, to analyze them and say and just give them a certificate saying that they are great. If you enjoy certain works of literature, if you find them to be nuanced, read it, review it. Reviews are not critical writings in that sense of the term. But that is not research. See, loving to ride sports bikes does not make you a researcher into any kind of automotive technology. You're just a user. If you like great literature, read it. If you are not willing to raise critical questions regarding it, it's not exactly possible for you to do genuine research. All these use refer to my young students, of course, not because it's a mixed audience. I keep feeling the need to mention that. Now we come to, I'll move quickly. I do realize that we do have time constraints, but then there are a few things that I must say. See, the theory conundrum, the puzzle of theory, it's related to this whole idea of pure literature, wherein people assume that there is some sort of binary between theory and pure literature. My point, what I always say, and students always ask whether they can apply this particular theory to this text, or what theory can be applied to it. And this is not original to me. I don't know whether I heard it, but then my response always is, theory is not Vicks Vaporub for you to apply it. It's not something external. If you want a metaphor for theory, it's the lens through which you view culture. It's let's say it's a lens with certain kinds of power, that is a prescription lens, which enables you to see certain aspects of literature and culture. Or if we are thinking of a work of art as if you're using a food metaphor, theory is not spices. See, there are a group of novels there, and we want to write something about it and get a degree. So we just put some Marxism in it and presto, you have a theory. No, just like we put some seasoning or spices on top and mix it in. No, that's not what theory is. Theory is the taste buds or your sense of smell, which enables you to enjoy, to appreciate or engage with that particular aspect of culture. So, obvious way to explain this would be to think of, see, when somebody makes a Marxist reading, they are not reading class into that text. The idea is that there are class relations presented within that text. That text does engage with the whole idea of what it means to belong to a particular class, or often we have to speak about intersectionality. No text is about a single thing. No text is about a single category. A particular text may have presented class, race, and gender, and even sexuality in very complex cultural assemblages. A very significant word in postmodern criticism, assemblages. And theory is what helps us perceive these things. It's theory that helps us raise certain questions. If you have to read a text and wonder, okay, what theory can I use here? Then there is something wrong with the way you are using theory. If you are somebody, see, basically what I'm saying is theory is something you have to internalize. It is something that helps you understand literature at another level. It is not opposed to your engagement with literature. See, and if you believe that, see, the idea, see, I'm a great fan of Shakespeare. The awareness that there are racial and gender stereotypes in Shakespeare has not lessened my understanding of, my enjoyment of Shakespeare. When I read Shakespeare, I do so with the awareness that it is a text, his plays often say very interesting things, often make very interesting interventions regarding culture. But of course, there are certain aspects of his politics that are problematic. We are not here to categorize works into works that are great and works that are deplorable. That's not our job. That's not what our job is. Right. And one aspect of hatred towards theory is the idea that I don't want to politicize literature. I just want to speak about it. I just want to deal with it. Being apolitical is a kind of aggressive politics. If you say, I hope that much is obvious to even this to all the students among the audience, right? If you are saying we should not raise certain questions, what you are saying is that injustice should not be questioned, right? See, when we say that there are plenty of women's writings throughout history which has not received the kind of recognition that they should because of patriarchal structures, that is no slur on the male writers, the quality of the work of the male writers which we have been reading. It's just that they have been getting more than their fair representation. That's the whole point. We can speak more about that in the discussion if you are interested. Quickly, I don't want to skip this part because I believe it will be useful for students. See, it is very easy relatively easier for students to understand how something like a Marxist analysis or a feminist analysis can be internalized and applied to text. One of the most misunderstood texts, or the text which has been engaged with only superficially, is Barthes' Death of the Author. Everyone has been so upset, or most people have been so upset by the proclamation of a death of the author that they are not engaged with their critical work at all. I'm speaking of students here. The nuanced scholars obviously have. See, what Death of the Author already actually says is that it is impossible to find the origin of all the ideas, all the various strands of ideas present in a work in a single personality called the author. And this is a telling sentence. The text is a tissue of quotations drawn from the innumerable centers of culture. From innumerable tissue of quotations, that is excerpts from various centers of culture. Within any text that is sufficiently complicated, see, unless we are making very plain statements like men and women are equal, any larger narrative will have multiple ideas which originally trace their genealogy from various schools of thought. Without the author being aware of it, he or she will cite various ideological and philosophical ideas. See, which is why Barthes asks this interesting question in the beginning of the essay. He quotes the description and he says, who is speaking? Is it Balzac, the author? Or is it some other stream of thought? Where does it originate from? And we can't pinpoint that, right? And this idea, rather than so at every point, whenever you analyze the text, okay, we should not, it's not exactly the same as, intentional fallacy. It is more related to the whole idea that we should not make univocal interpretations of a text. Any text is internally contradictory. We are unlikely to completely resolve that contradiction. Right? See, why most female characters in Hamlet are quiet, Gertrude upsets the whole apple cart by a single cryptic statement, methinks the lady doth protest too much. That raises so many questions which cannot be definitively answered. Right? So, if you internalize the death of the author, you will appreciate this better. Now we come to the final part of my talk. This is the most practical part, the part where I give the most amount of practical tips that might be useful for students. This has to do with what constitutes originality in humanities research, the originality conundrum. Because originality is grossly misunderstood. Basically, I'm saying our students fail to pick up the habit of reading research at the postgraduate level. If somebody were to ask me, I mean, not that my assessment is all that important, but if somebody were to be kind enough to ask me, what do you think is wrong with the way students are going about research, I would say they are failing to acquire research skills and they are failing to understand the process of research because they don't read enough research, they don't read enough literary criticism. They have a skewed understanding of what constitutes originality in research. See, often many of us teachers commit the crime of telling our students that it's important to have your own original response to literature. No. You can have your own original response to literature, that does not matter. That in itself is not a crime. But then you have to know that when you are studying a work of literature or an element of culture as a scholar, you have to read the existing research that deals with it. You have to read literature and literary and cultural criticism because newness, novelty in humanities research means you should be aware of all the significant work that is already there on the topic and that you should be able to say something that is beyond it. Not that you should refute all of it. See, you may just be, humanities research often involves becoming aware of certain traditions of research on a particular topic, a body of works, and taking that inquiry a couple of steps further, or twisting it in certain ways, or questioning certain aspects of it. That is what humanities research is. So it's very important that students get into the habit of reading research and because if you read enough literary criticism, if you get in the habit of reading critical writings, after a point, you'll get the hang of understanding and engaging with those works of such works, and you will find that okay, this scholar, this remarkable scholar, world famous scholar has said this, but maybe he or she has not considered this, or this scholar has said this. But he has not or she has not completely understood the significance of his own idea or her own idea. Maybe that can be analyzed further, and that might be the nucleus or a remarkable research article. And sadly, I cannot move ahead from this section without speaking about what I mean by outstanding literary criticism, because there is this strange idea that everything that conventional approaches literature, everything up to TS8 or new criticism is criticism, and everything afterwards, everything from Saussure and Derrida onwards is theory. Literary criticism means critical writings on literature. Contemporary, postmodern analysis of literature and culture, or contemporary post-humanist reading of, let's say, technology, is literary criticism or cultural criticism. And what do I mean by outstanding criticism? See, unfortunately, if I ask PG students regarding the sources that they refer to, they will give me the names of such remarkable sources as SparkNotes, Shmoop, Lit Online, etc., etc. It is important to read and utilize peer-reviewed research. Articles published in peer-reviewed journals. What is peer review? Peer review is when you write an article, spending months on it, and when you submit it to a journal, or when you submit it for publication a particular book, or when you publish a book submit a book manuscript for publication, it will be reviewed by somebody who is a fellow academic, and usually what is used is double-blind peer review. If I write something on Kerala modernity and I submit it to a journal, they may send it to Dr. Meenati Pillai, because she is the expert on that, or they may send it to Dr. Devika. That they may be my two peer reviewers, and I won't know who they are, and they won't know who I am. They won't know that this work is written by this person who are acquainted to them, right? And they will give their feedback, and the work will be published only based on the recommendation of those experts. Often you will be asked, the authors will be asked to revise their drafts, because they will say, okay, the work is good, but you have not considered this, or this particular line of argument is problematic. See, there are good journals being run out of Kerala. There is no doubt about that. There are good peer-reviewed journals being run out of Southern Kerala itself, but no slur on them. But then there are journals which are extremely well known for their critical rigor. Such journals as Interventions, Modern Fiction Studies, Shakespeare Quarterly, or Ariel, which publishes remarkable work on postcolonial literatures, or postcolonial text. It's an open access journal. You can read it without subscription. Or South Asian Popular Culture. See, just go to the South Asian Popular Culture is a peer-reviewed journal published by Routledge. Go to the website of the journal and just type in Malayalam cinema on the search box, and you will find plenty of articles that deal with contemporary Malayalam cinema. Read the abstract, and you will understand the kind of rigorous research that is being done. If you want to be a serious researcher, you have to read that kinds of criticism. But similarly, while publishing, you have to evaluate your sources. If all your citations in your MA, MPhil, or PhD dissertation come from random websites and come from certain journals, there are certain journals which do not maintain quality, where anybody can publish anything, then your work won't be worth anything. You have to read and read cite, acknowledge the depth, read internalize, cite good research, and then build further upon it. You come across an article, you want to know whether it's a good article, whether it's worth reading. First you look at the journal, whether that's a well-known journal. Who is the journal published by? If it's published by a university department, or if it's published by a publisher like Routledge or maybe Sage, it's probably a good journal. The work will have quality because they have stringent peer review process. If a book that you are referring is published by Routledge or Palgrave or Oxford or Cambridge University Press, chances are the work is good. There is good research and there is bad research, and you cannot be a postgraduate student with interest in research if you do not read criticism. See, this is especially significant in the context of the NEP, because until now, with 2-year PG programs, teachers had the option of giving their students a certain amount of induction into research. With 1-year MAs, things might take a very different turn. It might mostly be left at the students. Now, I just want to say the why and how of reading criticism. See, first of all, I just want to say that you have to be, see, if you always look for material in Google, then there's a problem. You should look up material in Google Scholar, which is where you will get scholarly material. I don't have time to speak more about that. The point is, why read critical materials? I've already explained that quite a bit. You learn a lot by emulation, which is different from plagiarism. When you read articles by remarkable scholars, and when you read the ways in which they have teased out an argument, you will find you will find world famous scholars saying this person has said this person has said this, and and I'm adding this point. That often is good research, right? See, because, and that's the second point, so you will understand that arguments regarding culture are often complex. You can't fix the meaning of something. See, you can't say that, okay, see, I have analyzed this poem completely in this article, there's nothing more to say about it. That's not the way. See, you say that. That is one way of understanding this poem, because there is no saying that something new might not be discovered regarding that. And they will also pick up the nuance of the ways of writing critical essays, but I don't have time to speak about that. See, and this is something that is very useful from a practical perspective. In order to do research on a particular topic, you will have to read quite a bit of critical material. And nobody expects you to read everything. Because if you're reading the right kind of essay, reading a journal article will take you maybe an evening. 3-4 hours, you can often take that. So when you're doing research, often you may want to, before you spend time, before you invest time in a particular critical material, you might want to analyze and ascertain whether it's pertinent to you. Are there genuine shortcuts? There are. Before you read a journal article, read the abstract, because the abstract will have a thread of the argument. You are researching on cyber cultures, and you found an article that sounded significant, but when you read the abstract, you may discover that the methodology that they have used is completely different from yours. That is, in the sense that it is ideologically diametrically opposite to that of yours, and maybe it is not as critically rigorous as you want it to be. So maybe you don't have to read it. If you want to understand, if you want to decide whether you should spend 3-4 days reading a monograph, a book-length study, read the preface or the introduction. The preface or introduction will contain the argument, will contain the central idea. That's an ethic of academic writing. And in 9 cases out of 10, towards the last part of the introduction, there will be chapter plans. They will provide a structure of that particular book. They will say first chapter does this, second chapter does this, third chapter does this. That may help you prioritize. Maybe for the time being, when you have a deadline to write a chapter or to submit an article, maybe you will just skim through some of the other aspects of the book and you will read that part. Or you have come across a remarkable volume on postcolonial literature, and you just want to find out whether that particular work deals with let's say a particular novel. At the back of the book there will be an index. I hope, see, I'd be very thrilled if this is redundant for most of you, but I have a sense that many students still don't know. See, towards the end of the book there will be an index where they will have listed, okay, this particular work, Merchant of Venice, page 34 to 36. That means that work has been discussed in pages 34 to 36 of that particular book, and you can prioritize accordingly. Now we come to the final metaphor of the mirror. Why have I used not one but 2 metaphors relating to a looking glass, to a mirror, in the title and the section title of my lecture? A looking glass or a mirror where you perceive yourself. And what I'm trying to tell you is that in order to do good research, it's primarily important that you take yourself seriously and you think of yourself as a particular kind of researcher. That's what I've been trying to say in various ways throughout the lecture. See, do not do research because you need a research degree. I mean, people end up doing that, but then that's not the best way to do research. Do not apply this particular theory. See, I think it's easy to work on this author. I have serious issues with Marxism, but still I'll just apply the theory because that's what's most suitable. No. You have to engage with a particular question, and if you're using a particular perspective, then that perspective has to be a part of your intellectual makeup. And there is no good humanities research that is apolitical. See, humanities research, most of the time, is about questioning the politics of meaning, about how certain ways of shaping meaning is problematic. That cannot be done apolitically. Right, and closely related to the, so which is why the first step is to see yourself as a serious researcher. See, rather than think of yourself as a student who badly wants a PhD degree due to some reason and who is prepared to put herself or himself through the torture of working on something for 4 years just because you want that prefix. That does not make you a good researcher in humanities. What makes you a good researcher is when you have a particular understanding of culture and you have been genuinely moved by a question, which is why I spoke about the question. The question should drive you. When in the middle of any research, when the inevitable crisis strikes, you should believe that this question is worth answering. Do not work on something because it sounds good. Work on it because you believe that research and the question that it raises regarding meaning making has a political significance. See, so the researcher herself or himself has to be convinced that this work will make the world a better place. This is the way in which you can speak about humanities and ethics. That most humanities projects does have an ethical imperative of making the world a more fairer place, of combating inequality. But that is part of an acknowledgement that culture is complex. Not by the assumption that certain kinds of writers are savants or sages who will impart great wisdom. So I hope this was of some use even at the most basic level. Thank you so much for the invite and thank you for your patience. So that's it from me.
Thank you very much, Rakesh sir. There are quite a few questions that have been posted in the chat boxes. May I read them to you?
Of course, I can read them.
The other chat boxes as well.
Okay, yeah, please. I see, because I'm sorry if I haven't answered anything because I haven't been able to see the chat box until now. All right. Yes, please.
Here in this particular Meet chat box, the first question has been posted by Miss Aina Benjamin.
Yes. An old classmate in front of mine. Yes. Which
can't we do research in literature if we approach it from the arts perspective rather than the humanities? Right. It was asked.
My question is, how is that different from a humanities perspective? What do you mean by an arts perspective? If you mean, and Aina I know has a master's in creative writing from the UK, so she has a practitioner's perspective. So maybe that is what is fueling her question. But then, Aina, what I would say is that still remains within the humanities approach. A researcher does not have to necessarily stay apart from the subject that he or she is researching. Even while we are engaging in the production of art, that we are contesting, the ways in which meaning is made, right? So that falls very much within the way of humanities. See, to use an example which is dear to me, which comes to my area of research. The most remarkable piece of critical writing is not something that can be able to study. It is C.L.R. Holmes's memorial Beyond the Boundary. Right. So these two are not mutually exclusive. So wherever you engage with meanings, that's significant. That's the good approach. I hope address that to some extent.
The second question has been posed by Sarah Turin at 4:19 p.m. Can you see?
I can. And it's Rakesh. So,
unlike other branches,
yes, please, you can read it if you want. Yes. See, does our research have to be in correspondence with the reality? See, even fiction has a connection to reality, right? So we are not saying, we are not evaluating it by having a touchstone of reality. No. What we do is to see the ways in which a particular fiction relates to reality. Right. See, let's use the simplest example possible. Even if we see in a particular context, even if we utter a lie, the lie that we choose to utter has its own politics. Right. The kind of excuses that we give for something. Right. So when we analyze literature, we do not assume that it is 100% fiction. We do not assume that it's 100% facts either. See, for instance, now we analyze historical writings because we know that there is a fiction element there, there's a narrative element there, right? So reality is not a touchstone with which we analyze literature. But the point is, I think the best way to answer that would be to think about the fact that texts have a complicated relationship with the world. That point that I mentioned, that a particular element of reality may be transformed fictionally in a particular manner. It may have a complicated relationship with the reality. See, why did Arthur Miller feel that the Salem trials are the best ways of analyzing the McCarthy or of allegorizing the McCarthy era? That element of fictionalizing has a significance, right? So it is not exactly a reflection of reality. The whole process of studying literature is to study the ways in which literature relates to the larger world in a complicated manner, and we cannot have a clear linear answer to that. That's the whole point of research. It is still worthwhile because taking the second part individually, even if a work is completely fantastic, it may work as a commentary on the reality. Even if we create a nation that does not exist with a culture that is completely unique, that is inevitably a commentary on all the other cultures that exist. That is how it's worthwhile. Yes, please.
The next question has been posed by Tanya. So Tanya Alfonso.
Let me just read this for a minute. See, Tanya, that's a very vexing question. It's a very important question, and it's a very vexing question, right? See, we live in times when we have to be very afraid to speak. It is very possible. See, at the very minimum, you will face, you will face venomous comments, or on the other hand, you might even be arrested. Right, and there are conservative sections within academia. So see, ultimately the point is that wherever you work, whatever kind of academic work you are engaged in, you have to maintain your own perspective on culture. See, and if you are lucky enough to have a good guide, he or she will understand that the researcher is an individual who has his or her own perspective on culture. And the conformist tendencies are not something that we should conform to, and we should combat it however we can. If we have, and that is something which every person has to decide for himself or herself. Some people are comfortable taking to the streets, and that's good. Some people are comfortable appearing on panels and forcefully articulating a progressive vision. Some people are not capable of doing that, and I make no judgment there, because I don't know whether I myself have the courage to do that. Right. So maybe such people can work within academia, because see, even if I don't have the courage to do that, somebody whom I spoke to might benefit from that. Right. So we have to work within work from our positionality within the larger network of connections. That's my take on that.
Rakesh, sir, I think the participants in the other groups need the questions to be read out. So, next question from Parvati. Sir, can you please make clear the aspect of interest?
Yes, see, that's something which that I wished I had more time to speak about. See, interest, my only point, it's a very simple point, but interest is not about enjoyment. It's not about what you enjoy doing. Just because you enjoy science fiction, you might not enjoy researching science fiction. That's not it. Interest means that, see, when you are a person with a particular vision of culture, it might be progressive, it might be centrist, particular vision of culture, maybe regarding gender, maybe regarding sexuality, and when one particular cultural phenomenon and the politics of it interests you, that is your research interest. To put it in other words, my love for Sachin Tendulkar's straight drive has got nothing to do with my interest in researching cricket. And so that's the point. So it's, research is so it's not about doing what you love. It's about being a person who is in the habit of thinking about culture and having found certain questions that you find interesting. The question should drive you. You should feel that this question needs to be answered. That's what I meant by interest.
The next question also has been posed by Tania Alfonsa.
Yeah, I saw that.
And will such tendencies of bias take us back to the feudal age in a way? And how can academicians overcome that without falling prey to a thou shalt not speak dictum?
See, the thing is, everybody, as I said earlier, everybody has to engage with these issues to the extent to which they feel comfortable. And of course, such tendencies can take us back to the feudal era, and they already have, by the way. See, the feudal era never went away completely for it to be brought back. Caste and caste and your surname and your genus still matters in most parts of the country, right? And the best way for academics to overcome this is I would say, through their academic work itself. Because, see, the classroom, the seminar halls, those are places where we are affecting the way people think. See, let me tell you this. There is, this is the, I don't know whether this is the right response, but then, I don't believe that, I don't know whether I've made much of an impact with my work over the past few years, but whatever little impact I can claim, or maybe I don't have a right to it, but whatever little satisfaction that I deserve is when students, even former students, post something on Facebook, and when I understand that they are very critically nuanced, right? Because some good old things hold true. When you see inside your classroom, in the way you correct a student's answer script or research draft, there you can make meaningful change. In that way, a lot of change occurs. I believe in the power of the classroom and the seminar room. Right. Yes. And yes, I know. But then I would say, if it is for a good cause, pull a switch and beat by all means. If you feel that about a kind of hiding of the exact critical focus of your research will help it get accepted, do it by all means, because ultimately the funding that you receive is not, to go back to the question of feudalism, is not something that is being gifted by somebody. See, whenever we get funding from the UGC or the government, it is our own money, right? It is something that belongs to society at large, right? So by all means.
Just to repeat Diana's question, but isn't
Yes.
following the trend one of the ways in which you make sure your proposal is accepted and the project funded? So I was just answering this question. Moving on to the next question by Sarah Churian. Even if there are excerpts from centers of culture, do they show factual truth as the claim of a literary work that it is fiction? Doesn't it fall under the purview of cultural studies, where literature written in a particular culture and historical period is a part? How can we read culture and literature through the same lens when one is an objective reality and the other is subjective?
See, I think the best way to answer all of Sarah's questions is that, see, I mean, I'm not providing a ready-made answer here. I would just suggest that, because she's very, and it's good to think, it's good to be vexed by some of the issues. That shows that real thing is happening. And I would propose that it's worthwhile thinking about the fact that all ideas of reality are to some extent subjective, right? See, if you ask about contemporary India, the kind of things that are happening, different people will have different visions, and different visions of what is happening in this country. And I'm not just talking about the most obvious things such as the divide between the left and the right. I am speaking about things that are more nuanced, in the sense that, see, everybody interprets reality from a particular standpoint. It is possible for a person to belong to a majority community and pious in certain respects, while being progressive in certain other respects. See, people have the process of picking and choosing. So the way in which people choose to understand reality is very much subjective or heterogeneous. That's the way I would put it. Yes.
So there is a question from group 2. This is from Kavya Ranjit. So how relevant is field work when it comes to research in humanities, especially in interdisciplinary approaches?
Wow, I am very happy that question came up. It's very relevant. It's very, very relevant. But the thing is, that should be driven by the kind of question that you are, choosing to pose. See, most methodologies have their own functions. The question is, see, it depends on the kind of question that you are trying to raise, right? See, let me tell you, to put it simply, if your work is in order for you to be able to do field work in a meaningful manner, your research should be focused on a relatively micro level culture. Otherwise, it might be difficult for you to create a particular kind of sample size and to come up with a certain kind of interpretation from that. So yes. So in some cases, fieldwork is necessary. It is advisable. But the question is, does it help you answer your question? See, for example, okay, here I can give my example very effectively. See, one of the questions that I had in front of me while doing my research was whether to do field work. In the end, I chose against it and I completely focused on narratives, because I was looking at India and Pakistan, contemporary India and Pakistan. For one, I want to look at narratives because narratives have not been studied much when it comes to cricket writings. So that research gap I felt was important. Secondly, if I am let alone going to if I am doing field work, I have to do field work in Pakistan as well, which is not possible right now, right? Secondly, let alone going to Pakistan, I can't I can't, which is the whole idea of doing field work on cricket in India, contemporary India, is daunting, because the cricketing cultures of such cricketing centers as Bombay and Chennai are not the same as the cricketing cultures of Kerala. So the amount of field work that is necessary. So these are the criteria that decide whether field work is the right method for you.
So there is a question from one of the other groups, Himani Sharma. She's a PhD research scholar from Delhi University. She has asked, sir, can you suggest an international peer-reviewed journal with good impact factor?
I mean, perhaps I could, but shall I say I prefer not to, because the whole idea of choosing a journal is an academic exercise in itself. That is something which ideally, I'm saying this very respectfully, all right, because see, there are numerous journals themselves are very, very widely respected, good publishing. But then the point is that before you think of publishing somewhere, you should see whether the objectives of the journal match the objectives of your research. That is what determines whether work X is suitable to journal Y. If on the other hand, if you are asking this question because you just want to look to sample an accredited journal, I would say look at Ariel. Because it's very difficult for anybody other highly accomplished academics to publish that it's such a good journal. By the way, the whole idea of impact factor is also a bit problematic within humanities, because that is mostly based on certain kinds of quantitative analysis, the quantification of citations, etc. It does not work as well in humanities as it does in the natural sciences. So it's not impact factor that matters. Yes.
There is a question from Lida Paul. Any thoughts on why literary criticism and literary theory are taught as separate courses?
They shouldn't be. That's the simple. That's a simple answer to say. And I would strongly, argue that we should stop those misnomers. All these are different forms of, critical writings on literature. We can come up with alternate names. So this whole idea, there was criticism and then there was theory. That is deeply troubling indeed. Yes.
Looks like, sir, we have covered almost all the questions.
Okay. See, I'm very happy that, so many people raise questions, and because it's very difficult to get good questions, sincere questions, even in a face-to-face lecture. I'm very gratified that I got so many questions even in a webinar. That is the best kind of response that anybody can ask for. So can I take this juncture to say that I'm very gratified that I got this opportunity to speak to all you people. I hope it was useful to some extent. I have to specifically thank Sharon Chechi for the invite, because it's when somebody who is both a friend and a colleague reposes a certain amount of trust in you, that's something quite special. I hope I have lived up to it, or rather I have not let you down too bad. All right.
Oh my God, sir, thank you so much. We are indebted to you, and maybe you will never realize how much we have gained from this lecture, this session. And now we come to the close of the first day's program. I invite Tasneem F from semester 3 MA to share words of gratitude. Tasneem?
Good evening, one and all. It is with great pleasure that I propose the vote of thanks on this remarkable occasion. Research might seem like a simple word, which defines the process of trying to find resources that meet our needs. However, in reality, research is an art in itself and takes time and patience to find the right and relevant resources for our requirements. On behalf of everyone present here, I express my sincere gratitude to Rakesh Ramamoorthy sir for his deep insights into the process of research. It has distinctly helped us to gain a grasp on the subject and understand it with more clarity. Next, I would like to thank our beloved principal, Dr. Rita Lata Dikuto, for her words of inspiration and support. Our HOD, Sharon ma'am, has left no stone unturned to make sure that this venture turns out to be a success. Dear ma'am, on behalf of everyone here, I thank you for initiating this webinar for us. I would also like to extend my sincere thanks to our very own Nimisha ma'am for all the efforts she put in to make this webinar a sparkling success. I would also like to thank Sandhya ma'am and Meena ma'am for honoring this event with their presence. I also extend my gratitude to all my teachers. Last but not least, I would like to thank each one of you for lending your ears and actively taking part in the webinar. Thank you.
And
Thank you so much. Wonderful audience. I have to say that. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but then I forgot to say that. Wonderful audience. I really appreciate the response. Thank you.
And once again, let me thank you, dear sir, dear participants, and especially our dear Akhil, without whom this wouldn't have taken place. Thank you very much, dear Akhil, for all the technical support that you have given us. And with that, we have come to the close of day 1 program. Thank you, everyone. See you all tomorrow at the same time. Google Meet links will be given in the WhatsApp group half an hour before the program. Until then, goodbye.